Yo, what's going on, E7 fam? Pat here, back to do a guide for Abyss 105. If you recall from the other day, I did an Abyss 102 guide for the newer players, the intermediate players, and the content creators who were actually struggling with this. Basically, I heard a lot of people were struggling with 102, and 105 was another major sticking point for a lot of players. This Abyss, before it was nerfed, was by far the longest I had ever spent on a floor. I think I had spent close to about 3 days on it when it first came out. And I know what you're thinking, oh, I've been on it probably for months or like a year or more. I spent 3 days basically from sun up to sundown trying to clear this thing before it got nerfed. So now that it's nerfed, it's a bit more manageable. And just like with the previous one, I'm going to show you my team and how I actually did it. So I want you to meet the new boss. It is almost exactly the same as the old boss. If you actually watched Abyss 102, that guide that I made, you'll notice that this is almost the same exact composition. The only difference here is actually Unbound Knight Arowell here in the front. And honestly, Arowell isn't even really important to this run. You can actually play whatever tank you want in the front. I chose to use Arowell because it gets around Scorpetra and her mechanics if you just, for some reason, don't have a really good character with a stun or really high invested in Abyssal Crown. So I purposely picked Unbound Knight Arowell to showcase the ways that we can get around Scorpetra's ultimate if for whatever reason we just don't have very good stun capabilities on that floor. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Abyss 105 is absolutely a gear check. If you do not have good DPS, if you do not have good gear, you will fail it. There's nothing I can do to really help you other than explain to you the mechanics of the fight. If you simply do not have the damage to kill Bloodblade Corrine before she uses her second S3 in the fight, you simply need to get better gear and stronger damage dealers. That's pretty much what this floor is designed to do. So that's the bad news. The good news is, once you beat Abyss 105, I don't really think there are any other major sticking points for any of the floors from 106 onwards. I hear all the time that the Sinful Angelica floor is very difficult for some people. I didn't really have too much of a problem with that one. I think I beat it in the first like 40 minutes to 60 minutes that I was on it. It's largely just an RNG fiesta. You just got to get lucky and then you win. So if there is a demand for that floor, I will also revisit it, and let me know down in the comments below if there are other Abyss floors that I need to revisit and do these updated guides for you all on. Please, again, let me know. Even if I don't cover it now, I will eventually get around to it. I will put it in my backlog and hopefully get it around to it in the coming weeks. So let's talk about team compositions. So here's Arowell. You don't need Arowell to be this tanky or any of this pretty much at all. Honestly, Arowell is here only for this S3, Judgment of Light, because it stuns to get around Scorpetra. You can play whatever you want here. If you want to play Adventurer Raz, by all means, you can play Adventurer Raz. If you want to use the same exact Lilias from the previous video, you're welcome to do that as well. Just make sure you have a strong frontline tank. Arowell is just the best free-to-play option and is fairly good for players that don't have really good gear. Inos is up next. She gives you a lot of extra damage on your team. She has a defense break with Silent Fire, CR push with Maneuver Support, attack and speed buff with Enhanced Fire Cube. Specialty change on this character is trivially easy. Celestine actually helps supplement our actual healing on this character because the base values are low. If you do not want to play Inos 2.0, feel free to play whatever hero you want, such as Tamarin, for example. Just know that if you choose not to play a character like Tamarin or Inos 2.0, your damage dealers need to be that much stronger because these characters not only are healers, they function as supports, and in the case of Inos, also a debuffer, which really, really helps. Most important character in the run is going to be, again, Red Tenebria. If you watched Abyss 102, I told you she was worth investing in. If you have her, you really should invest in her. She makes Abyss very, very easy for a lot of floors from 102 onwards. So, Tenebria has a AoE sleep as well as 2-turn defense break on Nightmare, which not only amps your damage, but also allows us to control the adds on the first and second floors, which, as you'll see in the run, makes things trivially easy. Ominous Thunder's slows not only BBK, but also the adds on the second floor, which gives you more time to do DPS, especially if you do not have great damage dealing gear to begin with. Next up is Dark Explosion, which has a sleep chance, and if it actually happens to sleep the target, you'll get a 50% combat readiness increase on Tenebria. Only real stats that are necessary on this character: 100% critical hit chance to help with your off DPS, because this is a damage check. You might as well just get some critical hit chance, even if it's only 150% critical hit damage. Get some damage. Over 65% effectiveness. I have 63 here, which is cutting it close, but you really should have over 65. And then as much speed as you could get on the character. I have 267 in this video. I promise you could probably use like 245, 250. That's probably a-okay. Exclusive equipment is the decreased cooldown on Nightmare in order to make things easier. And Abyssal Crown, again, is super important because how Scorpetra works on the first floor, if you can't sleep or stun lock her, then essentially you are going to meet a very swift end. So it's important that your team has a dedicated stun or sleep on it, and nobody really does it better than Tenebria because she has a reliable sleep on 2 skills. She amps her damage with a defense break, and she can hold Abyssal Crown, which again helps her double up as a stunner. Last character is Savior Auden because she is a top tier DPS and also free. Everyone has her, so there's not really a reason for me to not choose her. If you are climbing Abyss, which is the hardest content in the game, and have not cleared episode 4 of the adventure, which is basically the beginner version of content, why are you watching this video? Get Savior Auden first. If you don't want to play Savior Auden, then you can play whatever damage dealer you want in this slot. Whatever your strongest one is, whether it's Spectre Tenebria, Landy, whatever you got. Some specific Moonlight 5-star that you love, you can absolutely play that here. You don't need Shepherd of the Hollow. You can just play Moonlight Dreamblade on this character. Just as much damage as we can get. Rage set will help immensely for you out there who are newer players. If you have strong rage gear, I recommend using it, especially if the rest of your gear is not super, super good. This is just my PvP Savior Auden, and at this point in my Epic 7 career, I'm kind of gear gapping this content pretty hard. I'm not going to lie. So you'll see me kill BBK a lot faster than you probably would yourself if you were a newer player. So do keep that in mind. If you're cutting it close, again, you just have to really amp up your damage. Let's jump into the run now, and I'll explain a little bit more about context with moves and things like that. Okay, so here we are into the actual fight. How Scorpetra works is she is immune to all debuffs aside from sleep and stun. When she uses her ultimate, it will always target the character in the front line, in this case, Arwell, or whatever tank you've chosen to use. When she uses the ultimate the first time, it will do a huge chunk of damage to your tank, but they will probably survive. The damage from Scorpetra will then increase on the second and potentially third ultimates. I say potentially because the second one most likely will kill almost every single tank for a person watching this video. Regardless of how good your gear is, the second one is probably going to be a kill. And for those of you that have supremely good gear, you might survive, but you will not survive the third one. So this is essentially, again, a damage check, or at least a control check. If you cannot kill Scorpetra before you die to the second or third S3, you will fail. And the way that we circumvent this is trying to stun or sleep Scorpetra whenever possible to prevent her from using her S3. So therefore, our tank lives and she doesn't ramp up her damage. Do note, whenever you sleep or stun Scorpetra, she does get a combat readiness push at the end of one of your turns. So she will potentially cut or sneak up on you if you're not aware of it. She does cycle turns a bit faster. That ultimate can creep up if you end up sleeping her by off chance or stunning her with like AoE Abyssal Crown stuns. Like that stuff can all cause her to cycle a little bit faster, so be aware of that. It might actually mess up your cooldowns. As for the Scorpion ads themselves, you don't really need to worry about them at all if your gear is really good. If you are somebody that is struggling and the Scorpions are actually killing you, feel free to kill 1 or 2 of them. Do not kill all 3 of them. There is a reason for this. The only way that you can mitigate Scorpetra's S3 is through stun or sleep. If you do not have stun up on Arwell, then you have to rely on Abyssal Crown. If you don't have Arwell's S3 up and Abyssal Crown fails to proc, your only option is to put Scorpetra to sleep with Tenebria's S1 or her S3. What happens now if Scorpetra is the only character left alive, she is asleep, and then say Inos takes a turn, and then Scorpetra follows immediately after? Well, in the event that Scorpions are still alive, you can just press S1 on one of the ads, Scorpetra will stay asleep, miss her turn, your tank will live. If Scorpetra is the only character left alive, you will end up waking her up, killing your tank, and then failing the run. So it's important that you leave at least one of the Scorpion adds alive. You can see here now, the ultimate is up on Scorpetra, and we fire off an S3 from Arwell to stun it, and therefore that buys us yet another turn, and we're hopefully going to use this speed buff and the general sleeps and stuns from Tenebria to hopefully cycle back around to use Arwell's S3 and keep, again, Scorpetra under wraps. That's pretty much all there really is to say about this first floor. It's just, do you have good damage? Can you manage Scorpetra? If the answer to both those questions is yes, then it's pretty much just going to be pretty easy, pretty free. It just is going to end up taking a huge amount of time. And honestly, that's one of the most frustrating parts about this floor, is that Scorpetra on average is going to take, for most players, between like 7 to 15 minutes. And if you get to BBK and then fail immediately, that's another like 7 to 15 minutes that you've wasted. That's honestly, again, to me, the most frustrating part of this, is that Scorpetra takes far longer to clear and actually progress through than Bloodblade Corrine does on her floor. That floor is pretty much largely a DPS check. So whenever we get the chance, we're just going to fire off Odin's S3 for big damage, and we'll kind of try to hold it a little bit going into the second floor, so that way we have it for the burst damage if we need. If you are in dire straits, feel free to use souls for soul burns or for Archie. But I really think that everyone watching should hold all of your souls on the first floor. And that is because having access to 2 or 3 Archies ready to go will make your life significantly easier on the first turn, because you only really have essentially 2 ultimate cycles on Bloodblade Corrine to actually win the fight. After that, you'll just hit in a rage and then you'll lose the fight. You can see this Abyssal Crown is putting in work, and we've cycled back around to Arwell here. Very short cooldown, this S3. And there you go. Feel free, like I said, in the build section to use Lilius or whatever tank you actually want to use that will help you in terms of damage. If you are lacking damage on the second floor, somebody like Lilius will absolutely do wonders for you, will provide a lot more damage. It's possible to even use somebody like, I would think, perhaps Conqueror Lilius if you have her in the front line, because your front line is not really tanking a whole hell of a lot. You can see we have a lot of control coming out from Tenebria, a lot of stuns, a lot of sleeps, a lot of slows, so you're not really taking too much damage. When we get to the second floor, you're going to see it's very much a similar story. Red Tenebria really is the MVP for a lot of these harder floors. So we're going to fire this off not only for the AoE stun, but the high chance at the stun and sleep here on the adds. You can see that huge CR boost that we just got from not only Tenebria getting the sleep, but the S2 from Inos. Got to sleep again, so you can see, look how fast we are on Tenebria. She's already about to take another turn. We're going to save our S1 because we are pretty confident that we're going to be going into the next floor very quickly. So we're going to fire this off just to help cycle and for sure guarantee that our DPS get the kill here. Stun's not really important on the second floor for Arwell as much, especially if you're confident. You might need it to stun one of the adds, so it's at your discretion. I just decided to go for it there because it was a guaranteed way to make sure that my Arwell didn't take any damage for the purposes of the video. So now here we are. This is the big check. So you'll notice we fire off Archie with our healer when she does not actually have the buffs, because her turns don't really do a whole heck of a lot outside of a potential defense break. And then I have Tenebria coming up here already. That is an AoE defense break. So it's just better for us to fire off Archie since it is percentage max health damage. So you can see we don't get a defense break on the dark one, but we do get it on the light one, which they immediately cleanse. Whenever these floating heads actually attack, they cleanse debuffs off of characters. So you want to control them and kill whichever one, or stun or sleep, whichever one is potentially threatening to get rid of your debuffs. If it's awake, then you should be trying to stun it if at all possible, or sleep it if at all possible, and then have your DPS focus down the ones that are stunned. Don't wake up the ones that are already slept, essentially. So we go for a defense break on the one that is lower. Lucky dual attack. Doesn't really pan out, doesn't really do anything. You will get a high number of dual attacks on this character if you do have imprints, because she does have dual attack chance. So that one's stunned, so we're going to focus on it. See, if we had stun here, we could go for the light one. We're going to, again, just try and burst down this head as fast as possible. As a general rule of thumb, you should be able to kill both of the heads long before BBK gets to her first ultimate. At absolute worst, BBK should have her ultimate prepped and be very low on the CR bar by the time you kill the heads for her first ultimate. You have only until 2 ultimate cycles to actually win this fight. If you are not meeting that benchmark, you probably do not have enough damage for this fight, and you will need to rethink your strategy or your gear on your characters. So the reason why I did that is because I know that the off turn here on ROL isn't really going to be anything meaningful. So we could just Archie, and I know that we do about 12 to 13% damage, which is enough to pick up that kill. And then we use S1 here to pick off the head. As you can see, I'm pretty much gear gapping it. I'm way ahead of schedule from where I talked about. I'm roughly a whole turn cycle to like a turn and a half cycle ahead of where I just told you should be. We're firing off this ROL S3 here simply for souls and for the barrier to protect our team. S1, get that chip damage in. Same thing here. Get a defense break. S1 for big damage. We use Nightmare here just to extend the defense break up to 2 turns. S1 again, just because we don't have any other option. Dual attack from our imprints. S1. All right, you can see there's our halfway point warning. Reapply our slow. So now we could have S1 or S3 there with Auden. We chose not to because you can use Smite of Salvation's invincibility on the cycle back around to protect your characters from that first S3 if you so choose. So I'm going to show that off. Even though it's not going to line up quite right, you'll see like 1 or 2 characters ended up getting protected by this move. I think just Auden and Inos end up getting hit. This will not save you from the second one. Do keep that in mind, that I believe is a hard enrage. You will die to that. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, but I'm pretty confident you have until the second S3 or you just die. We Archie there because, again, there's not really anything else. Might as well get as much damage as possible. Unlucky that we got hit there on our Auden, so therefore we don't actually get the counter. Reapply defense break here. Got to keep the DPS up. S1 just for the damage. S1 for the damage. S2 for the chance to reapply slow. S3 just because it gives us souls and a barrier to mitigate the damage from the BBK turn. We get our lucky counter finally. Not that we need it. And then S1 to kill. So we will hold 2 turn cycles ahead. And that's basically the gist of how to clear Abyss 105. Hopefully this helps. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week. And I'll catch y'all in the next one. Bye-bye now.